So welcome everyone. I want to welcome Jessica Waite to I call this the Hummingbird series. This is like people and books you need to learn and know about because they're so fabulous. And Jess has written a book, The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards. Now, if this title doesn't grab you, I don't know, but it's so fantastic. But the book itself is so phenomenal. Um, and we're going to get into that. But Jess, tell us a little bit about the title. Like, give us a little intro.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's so I'm so happy to be here. And yeah, the title, people when they hear it, they sort of giggle nervously and lean in. And I totally get that and get why. And I'll say off the bat for anyone who might feel, alarmed by it or offended, my strong belief is that everybody deserves kindness and respect, and even the dead more so so in many cases than the living. And for me, this is a grief memoir, and the title is meant to I think do two things. One is acknowledge that anger can be and often is a very big part of a person's grief process. And also I hope it would make someone curious about what would make someone so angry that they would make that the title of their book, or what would make some tempt someone to defy that taboo and call. And I'll say other, this is not a spoiler, but Sean, my late husband, was someone who I really loved and held in extremely high regard, and we were together for 20 years. And so there's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek, as I've come to the other side. So this is starting from anger, coming to a place where I can kind of joke around in a way that I have a high degree of confidence he would be fine with, because he was someone who, I don't know if you know the phrase, like to take the mick out of someone or whatever. Like he
Yeah.
was a big tease, he was a trickster, he was a lot of things. And so his best friend is actually the person who suggested this title, and we both think that Sean would be okay with it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so obvious through the book, like the humor that you guys shared with each other. And I think in my review, when I was asked to, give a few words about what I thought, it was like, oh my God, this book has everything. It has like devastating grief. It has like rage, like, oh my God, it has shock. It has like everything that you want in a book, plus spirituality, sort of, or an invitation to consider
Yeah.
where do people go when they die, and do they hang around? What is happening? Like, can we still communicate with them?
Yeah. And that, interestingly, in some ways, even, beyond the parts that were hard to write because they were emotional, the parts that started, because I started to experience things that didn't used to happen around my home, like the light bulbs were all burning out and the TV and stereo were coming on by themselves, and that, like, other kind of strange phenomenon that, like, that's not how my world used to work. And I had to make sense of that, and like, like, at least to explain to myself, like, well, what's going on and what might it be. Um but writing about that, it is in a lot of ways the hardest part, because I feel really nervous about how that will be met, about how I might be like just completely brushed off as, like,
Flaky
sorry,
or
yes,
yeah,
flaky, unreliable, untrustworthy, all of those things. And yet, as you know, like, it's really important, I think, for us to share our stories, and to act with some curiosity. Well, what if something more is going on than what I used to perceive? And then if I do that, what happens next? And to yeah, so
yeah.
yeah.
They don't call it the great mystery for nothing.
Yeah, no. And
None of
that's
us.
why I was so grateful that you agreed to be an early reader of this book, because I knew I didn't have to be afraid of that with you, because
Yeah,
you've stood in your own experience and your truth, and written books of your own that I've read. And yeah, so
yeah,
yeah, what a joy that there are people who go before us and soften the ground a little bit so that we can tap our own courage.
yeah. One of the themes of this book is really about this idea that, we're with somebody 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. We think that we know them pretty well. But can we really know somebody to the full depth? Do we really know everything about them, or what percentage of the do we know about their lives? And I think that's a really interesting question. So I wanted to kind of talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that's one of the um things that is like slightly horrifying about a book like this is that you can feel very close to someone and feel like you deeply know them, like at a soul level. And yet, I think two things are at play: shame that of what lengths a person will go to hide their behaviors because they're afraid of, losing their relationship or losing what they have. And then also technology has made it easier and easier to hide, cover up tracks, and deceive one another. And so, just the fact like that we all have our own phones, like just that
Yeah.
alone makes it easy to kind of hide and cover up things. And so but then there's a digital footprint, right? And so it's like it might be easy to hide in life, but after you die, like especially if
Oh,
you didn't know that it was coming, it was sudden, like then there's a whole wealth of things for the living to sort of find and grapple with and ultimately reconcile or not.
yes, I feel like that was one of the biggest themes in the book was this idea of like things that are unresolved that can't really, I mean, in some senses can't be resolved because Sean is no longer on planet Earth to have a chit chat with or have some sessions with to understand what was going on. And so you're left to sort of resolve it. Um, can you talk a little bit about that with, I don't know, it's difficult without spoiler alerts, right? But how one finds resolution in a relationship when that person has died and is no longer here.
Yeah. So I think there were a couple of components. So I think for some people, people handle information differently. For me, I'm someone who likes to know. And so I tapped my inner Nancy Drew and I looked in, like, I turned over every stone trying to figure out, like, who was this man? What was really going on? And so I was able to sort of face like some degree of the reality. But which also made me maybe, or maybe it's the same driver, like when all these phenomena were happening, I had to look at that with a degree of, I don't know, curiosity as well. And in a very strange way, because I was so mad at Sean, because I was finding out about, people probably have guessed, like infidelity, compulsive spending, secret hidden debt, like a whole bunch of things that I like. It was a lot. I was so mad at him that when it seemed like he might be reaching back, I knew I wasn't wishful thinking. And like that, because that's the trap that people fall into when, anyway, like that you just made it up in your mind because you were so desperate to believe, right? And like I wasn't desperate for him to come back. I wanted him to like get out and stay out. And so that like series of events kind of helped me trust my own intuition and gave me a little bit of a place to stand. And so then from there, I think it softened my heart enough to start to allow these other shameful pieces and secrets that he was hiding in to my picture of him, and kind of integrate that. And that's that, like it feels like as much as I wanted to push them away, probably like when he was alive and then when I found them out after his death, that bringing them in helped me piece together, I guess, a new story for myself and my son. And that's sort of what the story of this book really is about. Yeah.
Yeah. And the full picture of him as a human being, like not I think you said in the epilogue, it was really neat. You said something to the fact that you had always wanted Sean to be everything,
Yeah,
the lover, the perfect dad, the fixer, the breadwinner, the whatever, all these beautiful roles that he played very well.
he did. He really did. And that was like the understanding that I came to in myself, that there's a real, this might sound like an overstatement, but I think there's a tyranny in wanting someone to be everything to you. And I think that that's the thing, all of the, like the princess movie. Do you know what I mean? And it's like where it's like
Yeah.
someone's going to come along, and it's so much pressure on men in our culture to be all of those things, not have needs of their own, not share when they're feeling vulnerable, scared, like any kind of thing that's a sign of weakness. And there's a mental health component to this story as well, where I think, if things had been different, maybe Sean could have been more honest about, the things that he needed, or the ways that he felt like he was failing us. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another theme that I really thought with just watching in the story that you were telling about, Sean, with the mental health struggles that we're going, just I was reminded just how isolating that journey can be because of the way culture and employers and all these different entities sort of treat mental health struggles, and often we end up just being, it's just us surviving on our own, trying to figure it out, which we are not, most of the time we are not equipped to handle some of those things, which can be emergencies, which can be dangerous. And
Yeah.
there are a few
Yeah.
scenes in the book where that gets played out.
Yeah, I think that's why it ends up so commonly coming to a crisis like that, because we're trying to just like hold it all together on our own, and not able to get the support that, yeah, might lead to a different outcome.
That we really need.
Yeah.
Um, on your journey, you ended up working with, well, first of all, I wanted to say I loved how you kind of, at one point with your mom, you sort of received this devastating news that your husband is dead. And it's shocking, and you're having to do all these things, and you have your wonderful mom by your side. And as you're driving one morning, you say to your mom, have you ever seen the movie Kung Fu Panda, Mom? And she's like, not really. And then you begin to tell her what it's like. Can you talk about your journey? Like why did you relate to Kung Fu Panda?
So but like I have we have a son who was 9 at the time that his dad died. He's just about to turn 18 now. But like that era was, he loved Kung Fu Panda, so I've seen that movie many times. But there's a scene where he sort of falls into his destiny. He wants to be a kung fu master, but he's not really prepared. He's just going along, bumbling around his life, and he falls into a training machine that is just bashing him down and setting him on fire. He keeps getting up and getting knocked down again. And it felt like, with the initial devastation of Sean's death, and then just the way, like, I'd make a discovery, I'd get knocked down, I'd come back up, and then, the next thing would happen, the next thing would happen. And I really kind of got to the point where I was like, what I said to my mom was like, should I just stay down? And it was so tempting. Like, it was really just so tempting to stay down, that it feels like a kind of grace, or maybe just the presence of my, like, what mom was like, you can lay down for the rest of the day, but tomorrow you're getting up and getting back again. And so, my mom set a kind of boundary for me. It's like, it's okay to rest, but you can't quit right now.
Yeah,
Like, you just
you
got to
gotta
keep
keep
going.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to go a couple directions with that, because I was thinking, well, that is the hero's journey. I love talking about the hero's journey, and I know some people get tired of the discussion, but like just this idea that we're being called to our destiny. So our husband dies, we had to discover all these things that were like, wait, this is not what I had imagined was going on. And then you're thrown into this kind of this training machine, which is the grieving process, the discovery process. And now here you are 9 years later. Like we say in the hero's journey, that you go through this horrible, difficult journey, and eventually you receive this treasure,
Yeah.
which then you can bring back to your community and you share it. And that's the hero's journey, and that's the gift. I mean, I know there's so many gifts. One of them is just this incredible book, which you guys, seriously, it is compulsively readable. It's like when you mentioned Nancy Drew, it's like it does feel a little bit like a mystery in some ways, because as you unfold the details, it's done in such a beautiful way. But yeah, any if you had to say something about the treasure.
I think in a lot of ways, the treasure was the courage to stand in the truth of the story, like even to face the things. And then so yeah, the first half of the book is kind of like, reads like a mystery, and then the second half is much more about the healing journey and experience, and trying to help, like if someone were to find themselves brokenhearted, just rageful cycling, and they don't know where to go or where to move forward. You kind of watch me bash around, make some mistakes, make some right turn, whatever, and then come to a place that's different from where I started. And I think that what I learned on the healing portion of the journey is that whatever, like, it's going to be different for everyone, but the thing that helps us to heal and integrate is paying attention to what's going on in our lives, whether that means it's on the front side where you're getting, like, things were not perfect in my relationship before Sean died. I knew that. But my intuition, every time it was screaming at me, I just failed to look one little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like I almost found it, but then I didn't quite find it. And so part of me was like, if I had listened more then, maybe I would have seen things sooner. So that part is important. But also to pay attention to the wondrous synchronicities in your life and start to really like notice and just notice what happens when you say, well, what if that, what if that was a sign, or what if that is a beautiful, wondrous thing that I can just absorb for a little bit longer that lifts me out of my despair, like that kind of thing. I hope that, like, if there was a gift for me, it was learning to trust and pay attention to that. And I hope that a reader would take that away. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you shared how you went to different healers and body workers, and kind of with this a little bit of trepidation, like, I don't even know if this is for me, but I'm open to it. Like, there was this, just this, and I always say that to people who are interested in shamanic healing. I'm like, you don't have to believe in anything, but you just do have to have like a little bit of an open mind. But can you talk a little bit about what that process did for you, or anything you want to share about that?
Yeah, for sure. So essentially I started out with like what I knew, like traditional like talk therapy. To me, like, for some people that's a hurdle to jump over. For me it wasn't, but it stopped working at a certain point. It wasn't like I got to a limit and then I needed like something else. And what felt at stake for me was like a life with my heart shut down, that I would just be bitter and resentful because I wouldn't be able to like open back up and trust again. And that lots of people live that way, I know, like, but it felt so painful and I just didn't want it for myself. And so it was fear of that in a lot of ways that like showed me I had to take a step to try something. I had to take a step to, I didn't have to believe it. That was the gift I gave myself too. It's like I didn't have to believe in anything. And that's what I hope also, that someone reading this is like, I'm not trying to persuade anyone of anything. I'm not trying to change anyone's spiritual beliefs. I just think it's like, for me, it was a little bit like following my nose and going down a road and there was nothing here and turn around, or yeah, like with you, like a, yeah, hummingbird going from flower to flower and just seeing what's here. And then, yeah, and somehow that just help me to get to the place where I could tell the story. And writing in and of itself was that for me too. I think it's a real technology of healing.
Yeah, writing is such a tech. And speaking of that, like, a lot of the people who are listen to this, these recordings are writers. And I know with a book like this isn't like, hey, I'm going to write a book in 60 days or on nano. What is that? What's the thing in October where everybody,
NaNoWriMo, yes,
NaNoWriMo.
November, yeah.
This is something that took so much time and care and the assistance of other people. Can you tell us a little bit about, just briefly, like, what that process looked like over time, and who helped you? And you don't have to name names or anything like
I
that, but
can't tell. Yeah, I will tell you, we'll be here for hours, but
of course.
essentially, um, I have always written in a journal, so I knew that writing was cathartic. But then when I started to understand that I had a story to tell, I knew that I wanted to like learn the craft of writing. And so I took this really huge, like, I think there were like over 1,000 people in a teleconference class with Martha Beck and Elizabeth Gilbert, because they had both written memoirs where weird kind of things happened, and so anyway, and so I like Expecting Adam was one, and Eat, Pray, Love. And so anyway, I was super excited because I'm like, this is gonna be good somehow. But the way that it was structured, there was a online forum and you were supposed to submit your assignments there and people could like comment, and I was like, I am never going to submit an assignment. I will never share. I'll just do the work and become a better writer, but never sharing. um and somehow by like the fourth week, the forums were so supportive that I
Mm.
allowed myself to share. And this is like, to me, the biggest step of what I would say to anyone who, like, writing for yourself and writing to get it out of your head is such an important step. But when we start to share, we start to reconnect. And then, so once I started to reconnect, I made new friends. I started to have peer support. Then I built my confidence to share more widely. Then, I took classes with other writers that were more about like critiquing work, and I built up my skills for that. And so every single step along the way, um, it was like building up a muscle of courage, and also building skill, and also just building friendships and connection. And so I
Yeah.
think those are all of the things that like bring us back to life. Like, I follow your work, creativity, like it's just the thing that makes you feel alive again when grief can feel so isolating at the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, so beautiful. And we don't do it alone. It's like so like we need that supportive community
Oh, it took a village to write this book. I will
for
I will
sure.
tell you. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask about was one of the powerful scenes in the book is really about a ceremony that you created. It wasn't run by some, powerful guru or master somewhere like Kung Fu Panda had, but you had a ceremony. And I just know for myself on my own transformative journey in life, it's like ceremonies have been so potent for me to take me to where I need to go next when I know I'm just not quite there, like they can really boost us. Can you talk a little bit about, yeah, ceremony and what that did for you?
Yeah, I was really lucky to meet someone who has a good intuition about ceremony, like, and so she helped me design a ceremony that sort of, it's the last, well, there was actually multiple ceremonies in the book,
Yeah.
but the last one, um it's sort of, okay, I'm trying to answer concisely, but how I see the flow of life is
Mhm.
that it's a constant conversion between matter and energy. Like, food is matter, we eat it, we turn it into energy, like, and it's just like, and everything is kind of like that. And so how I see ritual working is like, there's something in my imagination or in the imaginal, then I bring it into the real world through these actions that I do. And something represents something else, but I move things around, and it creates a shift in this world, because it's a kind of, yeah, it's letting that life flow between matter and energy happen, and moving me out of stuckness. And so it's really, um I think that in a sense, ritual is just action with meaning attached to it. That, yeah, like and it's so empowering that we can do these things for ourselves, and yeah, that we don't
Yeah,
have to, again, it doesn't cost money. It doesn't,
right.
like, you don't have to, yeah, yeah. So
It's
anyway,
natural, it's spontaneous. Like humans know how to create their own ceremonies. And I think reading your book, people will get some ideas. And I'm guessing a lot of people will do similar ceremonies using your example, or realize that they need one and maybe talk to a friend about how to create one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I hope so, because, and it's because we do that all the time. Like, yeah, when people are afraid when they hear the word ritual, I'm like, have you ever like put a candle in a cake and sung a song to someone? Like, it's like we do rituals
It
all
be
the
so
time.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what else did I want to ask you? Oh, I know what I wanted to mention was like, I think about I'm doing a 100-day project, leading one in a group this summer. And one of the beautiful projects is a young widow who lost her husband. And many of her posts, which she's allowed me to share, have to do with this idea of how well, some of them have to do with this idea of how like society sort of has this expectation. If you're a widow, especially a young widow, you should be, your role is to be extremely sad and to be really to be a certain way. Like we don't expect you to be angry. We don't expect you or want you to be joyful or happy, because that wouldn't be right, because and I'm really painting this in broad strokes, but
Yeah,
like how uncomfortable that is when you have sometimes a joyous moment and then maybe you feel suppressed, like I shouldn't be so happy because 36 hours ago I lost my partner, and
right,
I
right.
should appear sad or this is inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that's hard. And that, like, in the story, like there are episodes of me sort of performing a expected role, and it was so stifling and exhausting to do that. And so yeah, I really
what
um
would you say to somebody who's just lost something big? Maybe it's not a partner, but it
eh,
might be something else.
yeah, I think the most important thing is just being present to whatever you feel. And then, because then you're also going to notice, like, that it shifts and changes. Because like one of the hardest things for me with it was like the monotony of grief. It's just like you wake up and then you remember again, and then it's like, oh no, and how am I going to get through these like interminable seeming days? But I think when you're paying more attention, and when you like that, you can laugh at the moments, that there is joy, or that you have, like, what if you have sexual desire? Like after your partner died and it has, so like that kind of thing, like just that's an aliveness in you that's coming back, and it's nothing that a person should be ashamed of. It's just like all of those things. Um, yeah, I think the less you feel like you have to perform and the more you can be authentic in what it's like for you, the better you'll feel, and also you'll show other people that it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, yeah, and it's this book is just really powerful in kind of showing that no matter what the truth is, when you really sit in all of that, like when you really sit in all of that, there's something very profound, medicinal there. And I really got that from because you really took this deep dive into everything. So thank you so much for writing this book, you guys. This is so good. It's a book you're going to want to read with friends. You're going to want to do it in your book club so you can talk about all the things. And it's just really powerful. Anything, what else is there anything you want to like people to know about the book or anything else?
Yeah, I think that we've really covered most of it. And I think one of the things that makes it a good book club book is that not everyone is behaving at their best, and not everyone will agree with every decision that's made. And so I think it will generate a lot of good discussion. Like there are some things that I do where I do not look very, very good. And it felt important to me that I included those things too, where there's a bit of a revenge storyline. It's like I was so ashamed. But for some people, that's their favorite part of the story,
Oh,
because they can relate to that impulse. And so anyway,
yeah.
I think I hope that it encourages some interesting conversations, and yeah, and I hope that, like you said, um, to what I agree that there's medicine in the truth, and to whatever degree somebody like a reader's truth overlaps with mine, I'm sorry for the pain of that, but I'm also happy for us to like pool our medicine together, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think part of your honesty and not letting, you don't look good in all of the chapters and all of the stories. And
Nope.
that's what makes us trust you. I think that's what the great writers do is they show us their human side, they show us their shadow, and they let us take a good long look so that we can remember it like our own. And it's, yeah, really beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Jess, for being here. And you guys, The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards, you will want to get this book. You can order it today, and I think pre-order it today, and it will get to you, but whenever this shows.
July 30th. Yes. All right. Thank you, Sarah, so much.
Thanks, Jess.